Sean.
Thank you guys for allowing me to be able to share today. I'm excited. This title is, the whole series is Redeeming My Finances, Open-Handed Living in a Tight-Fisted World. So when you hear me say I, me, or my, I want you to hear God, because my story is being who God created me to be by living out His Word. I am just a conduit for God to work through. I am not here to get you involved in my story, but for you to be impacted by my story. My prayer is that what I share in my story challenges and impacts you and your story to the point that you do something in a whole new, big way. So 1 year ago, Invest in Others Charitable Foundation Gala was in New York City. There were 800 financial professionals and companies like TD Ameritrade, Fidelity, big companies. And Guy Adami from CNBC's show Fast Money was the MC. And now's the moment everybody was waiting for. And we'll come back and talk about that a little later on. Before I share some of my story, I want to share some important things. My why. So what is it that makes me exist? Why do I exist? My why is to radically impact the population of heaven. My life quote is by Charles Spurgeon. A good character is the best tombstone. Those who loved you and were helped by you will remember you. Carve your name on hearts, not on marble. So I want to talk about God's perspective for just a few minutes. Many of us have faith in God. I have a ton of faith in God. But you know, God has faith in us to be like His Son Jesus and to live out His Word. And to accomplish this, there's two things that we need to do. We need to live a life of faith-filled, focused yeses. So don't say yes to so many things and be the person that ends up doing a lot of things okay and then burns out. And the second thing, in those faith-filled, focused yeses, we need to live a life way out of our comfort zones, in the realm of the impossible. So today I want to share and focus on one Bible verse, Luke 6:38. Given it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, we poured in your lap. For the measure you use will be measured to you. So more on God's perspective. Luke 6:38. For with the measure you use will be measured to you. So if I can paraphrase that for you, if God can get it through you, He'll give it to you. You're first. So what is your measure? What is your measure on what God measures to you? It's important to realize we are conduits. So two important things. The measure you use and the measure to you will not be just about money. And your life will not be easier, but it will be impactful. Life and ministry will be harder and full of challenges. At the same time, you'll be right in the middle of God doing the craziest, most impossible things way beyond what you could ever imagine. So in summary, and please listen very closely because you really need to get this. God has faith in you to have a radical, open-handed measure and to have a radical, open-handed response to His measure back to you, because there are always recipients. The recipients will not only be the people in need, but will also be people that are in and part of your life. And when these people start living out a radical, open-handed Luke 6:38 life, then the world begins to change. That is so powerful. Rick Warren has a quote that describes this so well. Snowflakes are frail, but if enough of them stick together, they can stop traffic. So I want to share a little bit of my story. In 1989, I gave my heart and my life to Christ. I was in a small group, Bible study, and it was on ministry in the marketplace. So in 1991, I decided to do a career change. So I left what I was doing and opened Equity Concepts in 1991. My measure or promises to God at the very beginning were we will be a ministry in the marketplace. It will be His company. We will make Him smile, and He will be first in every decision that we make. He will be our chief executive advisor. So he literally has a card with all of our cards in the office. God has a card. It's got his name on it, and it says Chief Executive Advisor. And we're serious about that. Our first hour of the work week starts in devotions. So we as a family get together from 9 to 10 on Mondays, and we have devotions together. If somebody doesn't want to come, they can stay in their office. They just can't work. So we do not work. We give God our first hour of every week. Equity Concepts will be amazing when it comes to giving back. And we will live out our why. And our why is to help our clients be the best stewards of what God has entrusted to them. We have kept these promises for the last 27 years. And God's measure back a truly incredible family of staff, advisors, and clients that have been with Equity Concepts for a long time. And there's a lot of them here today. So then in 1995, I started giving. I decided it's time to give. So I was giving $40 a week. That was my choice, just to start giving $40 a week. And in 1996, a year later, I met a guy named Larry, who was Janice's husband. And we were having lunch, and he shared with me that he gives 35% of his gross income. I left that lunch going, the least I can do is do 10%. So I started tithing. But then God challenged me later that year to tithe not only money, but my time, my talent, my knowledge, my energy, my creativity. And that was easy except for the time part. It's 2.4 hours a day times 365 days a year. I wasn't getting the tithe of time in. So my church offered a missions trip to Dominican Republic. And it was for 10 days. So I thought 10 days times 24 hours is 240 hours. And plus everything else I do, I got it covered. So I got into missions heavily. I went to Venezuela and I went to El Salvador. And then came 2000 and Buddy called me and said, hey, let's go to Kazakhstan. So I went to Kazakhstan with Needles Eye Ministry. And I saw the result of faith-filled, focused yeses. It was so focused over there what they were doing. So that was 2000. In February 2001, I was invited to go to Niger, and I said, I'm in. Let's go. And so after we got back, the leader of that team said, let's go back again next year. I said, I love the idea. I'm in. So at that time, I knew God was calling me to focus on Niger, but I didn't know all the details. So I told Buddy I'd go back to Kazakhstan. It was a few months later in 2001. And the reason to go back was just to see and understand their focus. That's what I really wanted, to get that so I could take that to Niger. And I'm on a bus ride. So after you land, after this long flight, there's a 10-hour bus ride to get to where we're going. And I'm with this guy. I don't remember who he was. And I said, oh, I love Luke 6:38. It's my favorite Bible verse. And if God gives it to me, then I'm going to give it. He said, man, you don't even understand your favorite Bible verse. I said, what do you mean? He said, the measure used, we measure to you. He said, if God can get it through you, he'll give it to you. You're first. It absolutely rocked my world. It just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I finally got it. So then came February 2002, back to Niger. Came back from Niger. The leader said, hey, let's do a 5-year focus. I said, I'm in. And then February 2003 came to go back to Niger, and we didn't go as planned because that person moved away with his job, so he wasn't at our church anymore, and so nothing happened. 2 months later, love the way God works. 2 months later, I'm at a friend's house, and he shows me this video. And the video says, we have faith in God, but do you realize God has faith in you to be like Jesus? And it just hit me so hard. We have so much faith in God. I have so much faith in God, but that he has faith in me to be like his son. And so it just turned my world upside down. And I just said, God, right now, I promise you that I will lead with faith-filled focus, yeses to the people and nation of Niger. So then came November 2003, same year, and I invited 13 leaders to go to Niger, and all 13 said yes. And we went over there just to hear the dreams of the missionaries and Christians about transforming a nation for Christ. And so we started a nonprofit, Effective Ministries, to focus on the nation of Niger and the city of Richmond. And then I made 2 radical, I go first, open-handed measures. Radical open-handed measure number 1, I committed our first and highest paid Equity Concept staff person to work for and oversee the ministry. I gave God my very, very best. She'll hate it, but she's right over here. Okay? Radical open-handed measure number 2, I committed to covering 100% of the overhead, so 100% of the donations would go to Niger. I had no idea where the money was going to come from. I just knew I needed to measure first. Over the past 15 years, God has measured back so many times, and I've responded with radical, open-handed measures each time. And for 15 years, the Effective Ministries staff, my family, and hundreds of others have been living right in the middle of God doing the craziest, most impossible things that we could ever imagine. So let me explain by just sharing a little about our 3 faith-filled focuses as a ministry. So first, Link Missions. Link stands for Leading Innovatively Niger to the Kingdom. And Link Missions is just people going to Niger. God said at the very beginning, if you just get people to Niger, I'll do the rest. And so since 2003, we've been doing that. And as Buddy shared, and I'll give you the exact numbers, 107 teams consisting of 1,180 travelers from 229 churches in 33 states and 2 countries, all from the back corner office of a wealth management firm. That's crazy. Travelers' lives have been radically changed, and hundreds of stories. Schools for Niger. So that's the second area we focus on. Since 2005, we have built or are building 17 Christian schools that are impacting 7,430 students. Get this, there's a 6th grade exam in Niger, and if you don't pass it, you're out of school. Done. That's why there's so much illiteracy there. The Muslim schools, 18% passing percentage of that exam. Christian schools, 100%. The future leaders of Niger are going to be these Christian kids. So Live 1024 is the third area. Since 2011, we're living out Hebrews 10:24, which is to spur one another on. So people give $10.24 per month. That goes towards our 5 focus areas: health, water, orphans, education, and micro-business. And that's really the life cycle of a person in Niger. So in Niger, half the kids die before the age of 5. So to keep them alive, we got to take care of them health-wise, and we got to give them clean water. We need to take care of the orphans, educate them all, get them in micro-business so they can take care of their families and share the gospel. And that's literally the life cycle of a person in Niger. There are now 1,747 $10.24 per month to help 61 partner ministries working in these 5 areas of focus on the ground in Niger. So think about this. This is how it works. We have all this money that comes in, and we give it and hold them accountable to these 61 ministries in Niger in these 5 focus areas to help them be more successful. 100% of the money of the 1024s, 100% goes to Niger. And we do evangelism around all 3 of these areas that we focus on. So started with 1 staff, so now there's 8 staff in Richmond and 20 staff in Niger. So think about it, snowflakes. 61 partner ministries, 1,747 Live 1024s, 107 teams, 1,180 travelers. Snowflakes, snowflakes, snowflakes. If enough of them stick together, they can stop traffic. And I can tell you that Niger is on its way to becoming a Christian nation. Yeah. And in every way, it has been hard and challenging, very hard and challenging. But radical open-handed measure number 2, 15 years later, we are still covering 100% of a much higher overhead. So 100% of the donations can go to Niger. I have radically open-handed measured first and have continuously radically open-handed measured back to all of God's measures over the past 15 years. And it has stretched me big time. I want to share a few of many, many, many radical open-handed measure stories over the past 15 years. So first one for Niger. In 2011, we were getting ready to build a Link Outreach Center to start building. We didn't have near enough money to build it, but to start building. So there's this block in Niger that has the corner block, the piece of land that we bought. Then there's a piece of land next to it that nobody owned. And then there's 2 dormitories for the Assembly of God next to that. And so we got a call from a Muslim lady across the street and said, the Muslim leaders do not want the whole block to be a Christian block. So they're going to put a mosque. They're buying that land tomorrow, and they're going to put a mosque. So she kind of gave us the info. And so radical open-handed measure, use the money we were going to build for the LOC, the Link Outreach Center, buy the lot. The next morning, they were so confused what just happened. Like it wasn't there. We got it. So it's a Christian block. So now we don't have the money to buy to start building, but let's talk about God's measure back. We had a traveler that put up $250,000 to build the first floor on both the lots. And then he said, I'll do a match for the next $250,000. I'll do $125,000 if you can find somebody to get the other $125,000. Shortly after that, I got a call from David Meyer, Joyce Meyer's son from Joyce Meyer Ministries, and David said, I got to see what's happening out there. I want to meet you out there. So I went out there and met him. He said, what do you need? I said, I need $125,000 to get the second floor on this building. And they wrote a check. God's measure back. What's even crazier, God measure back, is it's self-sufficient completely in a fourth world country. That's crazy. A Richmond story. In 2007, radically open-handed measure, Sharon and myself and another couple used historical tax credits to rebuild and reopen the Robinson Theater in Churchill as a community arts center. Renovation turned in to be triple the cost we expected. And first time in my life, I thought bankruptcy could happen. Radical open-handed measure. Without the money, we're going to do something totally different than what most people would think. We're going to actually cover 100% of the director's salary on top of the money we don't have and just let God come through. And did God come through? Listen to the measures back from God. The director has been there from day one over 10 years and has been paid. We needed about $100,000 to do some more construction. And there was a girl that we knew who was in construction, and she said, listen, I just want to adopt a child, and I need $30,000 to adopt this child. You give me the $30,000 to adopt the child, I'll do the $100,000 of construction. What a measure from God. A bank stepped in the middle of the financial crisis in 2008 and gave us financing for the building. That's a crazy God measure. And it's self-sufficient since day one. That's a crazy God measure. So a personal story. God's measure, let me back up and say this first. So I'm in my office, and there's a client that comes in to sign some papers. He says, what are you up to? I said, just bought a piece of land in Mechanicsville. It's my whole world is. I'm going to build a house there. He said, you got to check out the house next to where I live. And I said, you live in Montpelier. I have nothing out in Montpelier. Why would I go out there? But then I started thinking about it. And I told a friend of mine, and I said, let's go out there and check it out, because I don't know what God's up to. This might be a measure, and I don't want to miss a measure from God. So the people who were buying the house, their financing fell through, and to make a long story short, I got the house for 40% under appraisal. Our radical open measure was to fill it up, because it was bigger than what we needed. So October 12th, we adopted Zalika at age 7 from one of the orphanages that we built in Niger. It took 5 years. No one had adopted from Niger. I mean, it's fourth world. No one goes there. They didn't have an adoption process. And so we adopted her. It was hard and challenging. August 2013, we adopted Elisa at age 15 from Latvia. And then Mary Shannon, who was their tutor, we said, well, you just come on and live with us too. So she came in and lived, so the house was just filling up. And now 6 other families have adopted from Niger. So there are hundreds of snowflake stories of those impacted and are now living out a radical, open-handed Luke 6:38 life. Hundreds. And so now the moment everyone has been waiting for, which Buddy and I didn't talk about so you're going to know a little bit about this. But I was a finalist out of all the financial advisors in the United States of America for the Invest in Others Charitable Foundation Global Community Impact Award. And they opened the envelope and say Michael Thaler and Effective Ministries is the winner. And I stood up and I'm walking up to the podium and I thought, wow, God, what a measure. That's crazy. And so my response to his measure, I had the platform of an audience to give a radically measured speech that totally glorified God to an audience of 800 people, financial professionals and companies. And not one of the other winners' speeches that night even mentioned the word God. So in closing, 2 things. A challenge, and the challenge becoming a reality. So first, the challenge. No matter who you are, as long as you're breathing, so that's everybody in here, I hope you choose to go on a new path inspired by God to do His work with your finances in your life. Know your why. If you don't have a personal why, then get one, because it will define your story. And snowflakes will start sticking together. And you will experience a life story way beyond what you could ever imagine. Second, the challenge becoming reality. You don't have to be the first snowflake and start a ministry. You can be an incredible snowflake in a ministry, just like many of us are to Needle's Eye. And God will equip you. Don't overthink it from the beginning. If somebody would have told me 15 years ago my life would look like this, I would have said no. I'm glad God didn't tell me. But he equips you. He does equip. In Mark Batterson's book, In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, Mark Batterson says, well done, well, he says, the Bible says, well done, good and faithful servant. Not well thought and not well said, good and faithful servant, but well done. It's vital to live out well done on a daily basis. Gustavus Swift has the greatest quote about being well done. Don't let the best you've done so far be the standard for the rest of your life. I hope you see and live out Luke 6:38 from a different perspective, God's perspective. Give and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, the measure that you use will be measured to you. It's decision time for a radical, open-handed measure. You're first. Thank you guys for letting me share.
Three things. This thing is coming apart. Second thing, we're going to go a couple minutes over. Y'all who come regularly know me well, that does not happen. Because of the nature of what you've heard and the time, we're going to go a few minutes over. We will finish before 1 o'clock, but if you need to leave, I understand. But we're going to have a couple questions that you get to ask Michael, so I'm sure you're not going to leave during that because you want to hear, right? You want to ask the question. So who's got the first? That usually is all that's needed to get us started. No one? Oh, come on. No one has a question? You all understand this and are ready to apply it tonight, right? Questions? Green.
Buddy, I understand that there are 3,000 homeless children in the Richmond area. 3,000.
Wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, have you looked into that?
Sure.
It sounds like to me that you could do something in that area.
Good question, Green.
3,000 homeless children in the metropolitan area.
I have not looked into it. I didn't know that. And who knows what God will do in spare time.
But I will add this. Are you familiar with Chat up on Churchill?
No.
Churchill Activities and Tutoring, a phenomenal ministry. The Robinson Center, which is what he bought and renovated, actually houses a lot of what they do on Churchill.
Yes, we do.
Including working with the kids.
Yeah, we do reach out and help work with them. And the Robinson Theater was just, there was so much happening in Niger, it was just a way to give back to the city of Richmond, because that was part of our nonprofit papers.
Stephen?
I live up in Churchill, and I've been here for 13 years, and I didn't know that you were the man behind it, but it's really transformed that neighborhood. And
can y'all hear Stephen? Rob, can you hear him?
I live up in Churchill. East End Fellowship meets in there. I've taken yoga classes, aerobic classes. There's a movie night in there. It has really become, and the story behind it is that it was Bill Robinson, African-American man at theater, and you've just brought back life to that community, and it's really nice to see who was behind that. The other one is, what have you learned about God?
I know that he will do anything with a yes, but a focused yes. He wants focus from us. So I've just learned that God, you know, it goes back to that whole thing of, I had so much trust in God, but he has trust, I have so much faith in God, but he has faith in us to be like him, or like Jesus. And I know it's John 14:12, you know, you can do more than Jesus did on this earth, paraphrased. So, but just that whole, just perspective. So perspective on God and what he sees in us in this lifetime, what he expects from us, changes everything. We're just here for a short period of time.
One or two more? Joe. And then Rob.
I hear a lot of folks get scared about another bubble, right? And in the Christian world, everybody's kind of working from a place of scarcity, even though we have more than most people around the world. How do you handle living a life of faith in abundance, knowing that, yes, economically things can change, but we're still, as Christ followers, called to live this way? How do you handle that?
Number one, I don't overthink it. And number one, I know God will take care of it. A bubble just is a great opportunity to just grow right through it. So bubbles would bother me before, but bubbles with God don't bother me at all. But don't overthink it. I think people overthink everything. Just don't overthink it. You know, people come in all the time and they go, I'm going to pray about going to Niger. And then, you know, they're just, what does that even mean? They're going to pray, you know. And so I always say, why don't you just say yes to going to Niger and then ask God to show you why you shouldn't go? So it's all perspective. No bubbles. God doesn't have bubbles.
Rob.
So, Michael, tell us about your journey and how it's affected your kids, like Brennan and your kids.
Yeah, I actually pulled that out of the speech, so it's funny you asked that, just because I didn't want to get too sidetracked on family. But Brennan, my son, you know, he made a comment. He said, Dad, at 3 years old, I was sitting in the car seat just watching you and listening to you. So our kids are watching and listening. And so Brennan has been to Niger 6 times. He's 18 years old. He just went into CNU. So he's been 6 times. One of those times was for 6.5 weeks as an intern. Last summer, he led the team, literally. At 18 years old, led the team. He's leading next summer. So get your kids on it, or you go on it. You just hang out with orphans all day. It's fabulous. And in 2013, he was in Niger. And so we have a great relationship with the government there. So if we want land for orphanages or for schools, we just ask for it and they give it to us. Okay? So we had land for an orphanage because this orphanage called CSEN, they were renting and they were just told that they weren't going to be rented to anymore. And so this mom and dad with 28 orphan children learned they were going to be removed. And Brennan heard that and said, I can't let that be. So he, at age 13, decided he was going to raise $265,000 to build that orphanage. He had 3 galas over 3 years, raised $265,000, 2 years to build it. So 5 years later, it just opened and all 28 kids moved to their new home. I could go on for hours with stories like that. These are the hundreds of stories.
One last final question. Who will do it?
Do it.
You're here to, you're doing the video.
Well,
James.
It's kind of a statement, and there might be a question in it that you'll get, so I haven't really even formed it in my head. But I'm a 33-year-old young man, born and raised in Richmond. A lot of friends my age, and a lot of those folks who are young men and women are still trying to figure out what their purpose and their why is, right, that early on. And you started the Niger thing back in the early 2000s, right? So with that comes, like, you know, at our age, like a lot of distractions and a lot of questions and a lot of kind of existential things and whatever to kind of think through in life. What sort of advice can you give to young men and women? Preferably so I can get a soundbite, right? What kind of advice would you have given to yourself back then when you were first starting the ideas and the programs with Niger?
I'm not sure where to go with that. So I hopefully I'll answer this. So I keep going back to the same thing. Just be focused. Try to find out where God is taking them or where God is taking you. And try. If it doesn't work, try something else. But it's like a repeat. The overthinking thing, people just overthink. I met a guy once, he said he was trying to figure out evolution, all these things, and if he loved the Lord. And it's been 6 years. I said, man, 6 years, move on. Just make a difference. So just don't overthink it. Find something, try something, get involved in something, but do something. So I would just say, just do something. And then you'll find out if it's good or not good, and you'll figure it out. But do something. Don't overthink it.
I want to say something. Michael played, I mean, we all know that I think you're wonderful and you're...
This is Mom.
This is Mom. She just moved here last week, and we got to go, so really quick. So.
prayer for the day every morning. You know, every day you have a new prayer that you talk to God. And so he read it with me. He just sat there, but he listened to it. And Michael loves basketball, and he was a fabulous basketball player. He was playing on this team, and they were down 1 point, and I think they had about 5 seconds or something. And Michael gets this ball, and he runs up and goes in, and he gets 2 points, so they win. And he said to me afterwards, I said, "What did you think about? What were you doing?" He said, "I said, God, I said, well, please help me now."
Thank you, Michael.